Hey team, I just bought a new bulldozer. It's a Case 850B, circa 1970, mid-70s, 76 I think. I just purchased this and discovered a couple of things that need to be resolved, which I anticipated, and some things that I didn't anticipate. So this series of videos is going to be taking a look at primarily the blade and what I need to do to repair it. So bear with me here. I'm going to have to pull off the blade because, well, you'll see in the future videos, but the pivot point where the blade attaches to the bulldozer or to the blade carrier is cracked. And so let's take a look at that and see what we need to do to repair it. So I got the blade off of the dozer, and as you can see, this pivot point, which is actually supposed to go here on the blade, has been ripped off. And you can see that there's quite a lot of cracking around it. And it basically just ripped it off of the blade because, I guess because it was improperly mounted or just too much force on it. Also, on both sides of these runners, so this is the mechanism that lifts and tilts the blade, you can see the amount of wear that's been happening, and correspondingly on the keepers. So this is basically a guide that holds the blade in position, and it's worn down, and it looks like this has been tried to be built up before in the past. So I'm going to have to weld this up and obviously weld that steel pipe pivot piece and reconstruct all of that before I can reassemble it. So I got the blade up on some cinder blocks here, and about to start some type of repair methodology. As you see, it's got a pretty good rip where it's taken out, and I'm wondering if I can just weld that back up as is, well, you know, cleaning up all of the joints, etc., or if I should come all the way up and to this, there's a support underneath it here on the top and the bottom. If I should remove this metal all around and weld on a new piece. So this is the pivot piece. This mounts onto the back of the blade and goes into the blade carrier on the tractor, on the crawler. You can see here it ripped away. It looks like this was probably the original piece that was ripped away, and they just welded it back onto, well, heck, I don't know. But this looks to be the original factory weld for sure. Not really sure how they went about it. So I'm going to have to cut this down to get this 6-inch pivot piece and then re-weld it. I'm thinking what I might do is get rid of some of the stuff with the grinding wheel, put this whole thing in the lathe and just try to tool that down. I tried to go at it with the bandsaw, but my bandsaw is only good for 4 inches, and I wouldn't be able to get through that unless I go buy a bigger bandsaw. So I'm going to scratch my head about that a bit and see what we end up with. I think regardless, I'll end up putting that on the lathe and putting a bevel on it. So let's see what I can do. Well, as you can see, I was only able to get through so far with the bandsaw, and I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, but I'm going to try to use a torch. so I had it's a pretty healthy gap between the weld and then this plate behind it. So I was getting a lot of blowback on the torch, and that was kind of a challenge, but I ended up prying it off with the chisel once I got it cut out. So that seemed to work all right. So here's what looks to be the original piece where it ripped off. I kind of cut through the original piece, and then that was welded down here somehow. Not really sure how this was originally repaired, but I'm going to try to clean up this end of this pivot point. I'm thinking, just because I have it, I'm going to mount it on the lathe and tool that down and put a nice bevel on it. So let's see if we can do that. Well, I took it off the lathe and decided to cut off all of that waste with the torch, inside and outside. So I've got to clean this up, and I'll probably hit it with the grinder, smooth it out, and then put it back up on the lathe. Well, I got my weld prep done. The outside I cut on the lathe. Probably didn't need to, but I did. Kind of needed to justify having it, I guess. And then the inside I actually had to do with a right angle grinder. I didn't have a boring bar for my lathe, but this was probably just as easy. Got the damaged area removed. Lots of packed clay under here. No telling how long that had been broken. So here's what it looks like inside. There's these struts here that support the front of the blade to the back of the blade to give it more rigidity. And the problem I'm encountered, my plate is a 1/2 inch thick. The original piece here is about 3/8 inch thick. And I was thinking that, well, okay, it would just sit down lower, but these things are tapered inward. So I've had to put an extreme bevel on the backside to kind of get it to sit down inside of here such that it's flush on top. And I'm just grinding away here and trying to fit this piece into this hole, which is trickier than I expected it to be. So I'll keep plugging away at that. Okay, I've been fitting this thing for quite a while here. Got a little bit further to go. It's just a lot of lifting it off and grinding some more, trying to figure out where it's making contact at. Looks like I'm running a little high right here and right here. So we'll go at it again. Okay, I've got it fit in there pretty good. Not 100% happy with it. It's just a little high, but I'm trying to fart with it. And then this surface here is flat, which is where this is gonna bridge. It actually sits about like that. So, and then I have this crack here. So I chase that crack out, and I'm gonna lay a bead of weld in there like before.
I excavated that. I'm going to probably excavate it a bit more. And same right here, might be off camera. And then I'm going to weld this, and we'll see where we get from there. Well, I've gone back to the 7018, and it certainly penetrates much better. My welds still look like shit, but I feel that I'm getting better results as far as holding these two pieces together. So I think what I'll do is put the initial pass at 7018 and then come in with any additional passes if I need them, and try to make it look better, I guess, with the 7014. So anybody have any comments out there on ways to improve, I would certainly appreciate them. Again, I've never learned to weld. I'm just figuring this out as I go. So I've got this welded in place. It's gonna have to do. And I've set the cylinder where I believe it goes. I put a couple witness marks on there, but I lost most of them. I have one left, and it's not too hard to figure out left to right where it goes. It's easy to center that, but sits a little bit below center when I took it off. I'm assuming that it was correct when I took it off. It seemed to work. So I'm going to try to match that there. I've checked it off of the blade carrier a couple of places, and there's really no good reference point. So I ought to tack it on and fit it and then finish weld it, but that's a lot of effort. So I think I'm going to just go off of the witness marks that I had and pray that that's where it needs to set. So I'm gonna mount this pivot point to the plate that I welded in. I have tacked down in a couple of spots. I'm gonna put a root pass in there using a 6011 rod because of its ability to penetrate, and hopefully I'll put a root pass across there, and then I'll put the fillet weld in, probably using the 7018, maybe 7014. I'll see how it goes. I prefer the 7014 for its workability. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, I finished the root pass with 6011. I did get good penetration. You know, I cleaned that up a little bit with a grinding disc. Obviously, I've missed a couple of spots there. Looking at the inside, if you can see that, that was pretty tough to get in there, and it looks pretty ugly. I still got some slag to clean out. Yeah, nothing to be proud of, but it'll stay on there. All right, there's my second pass. I went with the 7014 5/32 rod, and not too bad. So I'll try to come up above that one for my third pass, and we'll see how it goes. All right, so I completed my second pass on the outside. I'm gonna go inside and try to get something in there next. I think I'll put another pass. All right, here I've completed my third pass around the outside. I'll go into the inside next. The challenge I'm having here is keeping the rod at the right angle as I rotate around the outside. So this is the best section. If I went around to the other side, you'd see it's not quite as pretty. So I'm gonna move to the inside now and try to get some weld on the inside of this pipe up in here. Much more challenging. Okay, I think I'm gonna quit while I'm ahead. Doesn't look too terribly bad. Of course, this is the good side I'm showing you. It was quite challenging because, you know, you're moving, your hand is at a wider diameter than the actual tip of the rod. So
you're having to move pretty fast with the outside of your hand, but try to keep the inside of the rod where it's hitting the metal steady. So, of course, this was rather difficult to reach. It's probably a 5-inch hole there, 4.5-inch hole, and not terrible. Let's see if we can get in there. Yeah, focus is a little off. So I'll clean up around the outside just to make sure there's no interference with the blade carrier. And here it is, all finished. Cleaned it up, made a nice bevel there so it doesn't interfere at all. Of course, I couldn't do anything on the inside, and I'm not sure how much that weld is going to help. But I'm pretty confident that that thing isn't going anywhere. So I'm going to let that be and move on to another part of the project. So this is what I'm calling the guide retainer. It basically captures, it bolts to the blade itself through these holes, and kind of captures the guide that's on the blade carrier and kind of retains it. But as you can see here, you know, somebody did a little bit of weld buildup before, and that's worn down. This is me just starting. So I'm going to have to build this all back up, flush with this surface here, and then machine it back down. So you can see a little bit of the weld that I did on the other guide retainer. So here's the keepers after I've machined them. So nice and flat. And I just realized that these things are reversible. Sorry about that. And so if you look on the other side, you can see that this has been worn, and then somebody flipped it over and you know, had written on the backside. So I think I'll probably build this up just while I have it off, and do it again on this side, just like I did the other side, in the event that I have to flip it over at some point. Might as well knock it out now. All right, here we are on the blade carrier itself. You can see that's this piece that mounts to the front of the crawler and holds the blade, so I'm calling it the blade carrier. You can see that there was previous repair work done, but look at that. Look how worn down that edge is. You can see here that, you know, it was all the way out here. So I'd say it's about 50% worn away. Same on the other side, and perhaps a little bit worse. You can see that wear. And again, the previous repairs down here. So I'm guessing this is a pretty typical, common thing, since it had to be repaired before. So what I'm gonna do is try to weld that up and restore that surface. I'm gonna do it in place. I'm not gonna take that carrier off of there because that would be a massive pain in the butt. Well, actually, maybe not. I might look at that. But anyway, unlikely. I'll probably try to weld it in place. And since that's a vertical weld, it's gonna certainly test my skills here. And so we'll see what it looks like. Well, this is my first attempt at welding that up. You can see here that it's very ugly. I started with 70-14 and it was just, it just wasn't setting up fast enough. So I have a lot of drip happening here. I ended up switching to 70-18 rod, 1/8 inch, and it looks more respectable anyway. So I'm going to have to do a lot of grinding and cleaning that up and continue, but I think getting pretty close to having it built up, and I'm not completely embarrassed with those welds, so I'm gonna grind that up a little bit and try to shape the surface. All right, I'm done with this side. It's very ugly. I put a lot of material on there. You can see it's about 1 inch thick there. Wasn't fun to do. I ended up, using a stick weld the bulk of the material, and then I tried to fill in those little voids there, MIG welding, just kind of little spots. I don't know. I'm just getting tired of doing this, so I'm gonna jump to the other side and hopefully it'll improve over there. Okay, this is the right side of the blade carrier. It's just like the left side was, tapered pretty much to a point. I'd say there's 3/4 of an inch missing there that I'm gonna have to build back up. This side will be a little bit more challenging at the bottom because of this. This is where the tilt cylinder mounts to the blade carrier. So getting down there is gonna be a challenge. So I'll clean that up and start laying down some metal. All right, here's just an in-process photo on the right-hand side. It's probably a little bit cold, but if I turn up the amperage any, it just starts dripping more. So I used the MIG function on this Thulium welder. Pretty cheap machine, but it's doing really well. I mean, I've been laying down a lot of rod, and the duty cycle on this thing is very impressive. It's not once crapped out on me. So here you see I'm just kind of filling in some of the voids in the weld, where the weld kind of digs into the base metal or the previously laid weld material. And I'm gonna grind that down and hopefully that'll look somewhat respectable. I still have all of this area down here to do. All right, so some more in-process stuff on the bottom part. I won't be able to get down there because of this cylinder mount. I won't be able to get in there to grind, so I won't try to fill that up, but I'm gonna start grinding now, try to take this down and see what I got. Another way to approach this, and probably a better way now that I'm just about done with the repair, is to cut this entire plate off, 1 inch plate, and weld a new one on. And that's probably the better approach, because down here at the bottom, not so much on this side, but the other side, it's worn. You can kind of see here. So I'm not gonna bother with the front side repair. But after having put all this effort into it, I'm thinking that might have been a better approach, is to just whack that whole plate off of there and weld it back on. Okay, team, it's been several weeks since I last worked on this project. Had several things, commitments that I had to attend to, and just to kind of recap, I rebuilt the tilt cylinder, one of the angle cylinders, and of course the reason for all of this was to weld up the blade carrier here all along that length. It was quite worn out. I also made a new pin down here. This one's a little oversized. It was kind of wallowed out, so I did that on the lathe. That's I think I'll make another project of that. And then of course the blade keepers here. This is all welded up and machined, and so I'm gonna put the blade back up on the dozer, mount the blade keepers to the blade, which keeps it on the carrier. That pivot point there is all welded in place. I'm pretty happy with this. You know, I'm about 90% satisfied with my welding and the finish and all of that. All right, I'm gonna go put that keeper in place so it doesn't pop off. Everything seems to be in the right position. That one is angled just a little bit too far away, but I'll put the keeper on one side and then I can angle the blade and get it seated against the blade. Angle the blade carrier to get it seated against the blade. Okay team, I've got the blade on, and when I was putting the blade keeper, that's this piece here that I had machined, welded up and machined, that bolts onto the back of the blade here and retains the blade carrier onto the blade. And what you can see, if you look at this just right, is that the blade carrier extends beyond the face of the back of the blade. And again, that keeper kind of presses the two together. And look how far out that extends. So I went to the parts manual, and sure enough, there is a spacer that goes in here that I guess is removable in the event that you wear this out, which it was before, and so they took that off. Let's get that from the side here, maybe. So I'm going to probably put some washers in there. I'm going to tack some washers to the blade keeper, or the keeper, and fill up that gap. But you can also tell that it's not too bad, but it's not uniform. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit and then remount that keeper onto the back of the blade with a few washers in there to act as that shim, because I'm not going to go buy one. Let's see what that's going to look like. All right, well, I'm pretty happy with how things have turned out. I'm gonna lubricate all of the grease fittings. As you can see here, there is a space in there. There's two washers stacked up underneath. I just tack welded those on to the blade carrier, the back of the blade carrier. I'm sorry, no, on the keeper, so that when I was putting the bolts in, they wouldn't fall off made it a little bit easier for assembly. I'm sure that that weld is broken free by now. It's a little bit easier to see here. As you can see, I got the washers there and a space. And it's hard to see from here, but the back of the blade carrier where I welded up is, for the most part, in contact with those keepers. And I'm sure that'll wear itself in and flatten out. You can see a little bit of daylight through there at the bottom. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with the work I've done. I don't know if it makes a difference. We'll have to take a look and put this thing through some paces and see how it does. Thanks for watching. Hope this helped you out.